You'll wake up in time and he will be perfectly silhouetted like a B-27, and I will say, stop, I'm an armed citizen, and you need to, it doesn't work that way. Hi there, and welcome to Guns Podcast U.S. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs as we chat about the interesting stuff and stuff we find interesting about the world of shooting. I'm your host, Brent, and of course, I'm joined by Roy Huntington. Howdy there, Roy. How you doing?
It's too early to tell.
Okay. We got to quit these crack of noon recording sessions.
It is true. Yeah, here we are at the crack of noon. Yeah. Maybe that's it. Yeah.
Yep. Well, we're going to talk about something that is very topical, and this comes directly from a reader comment or a couple of reader comments on YouTube, is the situation involving Nancy Guthrie. That's the mom of Savannah Guthrie. If you've looked at the news at all, it's in all the news. She's an older lady that got abducted from her home, maybe for ransom, probably, and they've got a lot more. And we had the question raised, you think it would have helped her if she'd had a pistol strapped to her side? And we're going to discuss many points about that. But first, we've got to listen to a quick word from our great sponsor, Tango Down.
Tango Down has been a trusted leader in firearms, parts, and accessories for more than 2 decades. Whether you're upgrading your everyday carry or finishing out your next rifle build, Tango Down has you covered. Their product line continues to grow with new releases coming in 2026. Visit tangodown.com to explore the full lineup and sign up for email updates so you don't miss what's next. Tango Down, combat gear without peer.
Well, Roy, an elderly woman kidnapped in Tucson. You've seen the door cam video, guys all dolled up. This certainly wasn't a crime of opportunity. Of course, there's a media frenzy going on basically because of who her daughter is, who is Savannah Guthrie. She's one of the hosts of the Today Show. And I don't know, dealing with our backgrounds in law enforcement, this sounds like it was definitely not a crime of opportunity. It was a planned event, but yet it doesn't sound like things worked out the way the perpetrators had planned. So knowing what you know, which is same as I do from just the media itself, your thoughts on what this whole thing was to begin with?
You know what? I really don't know, and I hate to be a member of the media and make conjectures and could it be, well, it could be anything. But what brought us here, though, is that the comments I had were people were thinking that, you know what, if this can happen to her in an exclusive community with security, in a secured house with cameras, well, then what's going to happen to me? It's like I just live in some neighborhood somewhere. And so they were saying, what should I do? Should I carry it home? I mean, are people going to think I'm crazy? And if I do carry it home, what should I do? And I thought all those are good questions.
Yep. So let's answer them. So we've both got a lot of opinions about this and a lot of practical experience, but I'm going to throw it back right to you, Roy. And I know your condition of your home, how you carry around your house, but explain it to our audience, how you go about your daily business there at the palatial estate outside of Joplin, Missouri.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I live in the country, pretty far in the country. My driveway is a private driveway and it's a third of a mile long. So the odds, and it's riddled with no trespassing, you smile, you're on camera and all that kind of stuff. And so it's rare that I ever get anybody back here. And so the odds of a bad guy coming back here are pretty remote, but I didn't say impossible. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing people need to think about. And usually when this, do you carry armed at home comes up, I see there's 2 answers. There's 2 people. They say, well, why would you do that? It's perfectly safe. You shouldn't worry about it. And if anything happens, you can always dial 911. All right. Well, I know they're libtard idiots and they've obviously never been the victim of a crime. right? Because there's an old adage about, a liberal is a conservative who hasn't been a victim of a crime yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's really true. And then there are other people who say, oh yeah, you know what, that makes good sense because, I've had this happen or my house was burglarized. I never want to be unprepared. I never want to be a victim again, and so I definitely am in that school. I know you are, and probably most of the people listening to this show. But for some reason, home is the king's X. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you come home at night, you open up the garage door, you pull your car inside, you go inside the house, and that's your safe zone now, right? But it's a safer zone, but is it really a safe zone? And I think especially if you live in an urban and many suburban environments, that you really should be thinking about this and pay attention. Because remember, if you're in a suburban environment, that means you're within spitting distance of the urban environment. And depending on where you live, I mean, you're a 10-minute car ride for any gangster, criminal, thug, target of opportunity seeker, anything else. Yeah.
Yep.
And so as far as the mechanics of it is, I don't think it takes a lot. And this is a thing that people get caught up in, stopping power and what's the best platform and, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to go on right now. I'm going to say it really doesn't matter. Okay. It really doesn't matter because nobody wants to get shot by anything. And if you have somebody trying to bust in your front door and he's halfway in the front door and you open up on him with a .22 Ruger single action revolver, I promise you things are going to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they're absolutely insane and on drugs and are losing their mind, they're going to run away. We've all seen those YouTube videos of 6 gang members break into a jewelry store and they all run in and they start smashing windows. And you see some little scrawny guy behind the counter reach up over the top and start shooting with a Jennings .22 automatic, right? What happens?
Bye-bye. Yeah. Bye. They're out of there.
They all run out and fall over each other and trip and smash into the door. And, because that's what happened. And so to me, it doesn't really matter. Carry whatever you're comfortable with. Carry what you will actually carry. If you want to just I always have a gun by my front door, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Kids, you have to be careful of all that kind of stuff depending on your situation. But I am here to tell you from personal experience, if your gun is in the other room, whatever's going to happen is going to happen while you're in the kitchen.
Yep.
Or taking your trash out that night and your gun is safe inside by your front door. And so what I do is I have a Ruger LCP Max 380. It's got, I think I put 10 rounds in it. I always like to load them down one. And that's always, always, always in my pocket. Always. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I'm here talking to you right now, it's in my pocket. And I mean, and that's what it takes. And you get used to it right away. You really do. Maybe other people would want a little J-frame revolver or that little Charter undercoverette is 13 ounces, 6-shot 32 Magnum, the perfect gun for this kind of stuff. And so the thing is just do it. And I know when I've talked to people about this, I'll hear from, vets and retired cops and stuff. And, they'll say, well, I got an old J-frame tucked in the cushion where I sit all the time reading newspaper. And then, but if I'm out and about, I pick it up and I put it in my pocket and carry it around. And the amazing thing, though, is that when I was editor of American Handgunner magazine, Massad Ayoob used to write, of course, the Ayoob files, right? Well, he did a lot of them. Where it started, well, there I was at home enjoying dinner.
Yep.
And suddenly he's in a toe-to-toe shootout with some creep that just busted through his front window, and you don't have time. Yeah.
You don't. And I'll admit, that's one of the things I think we do differently here on this channel, Roy, is we admit that we're not perfect tactical guys all the time. I generally do carry a 38 in a pocket. Sometimes, especially toward the evening, I may take it out, leave it on my desk or something. Now, I've also got guns staged throughout the house. I'm never more than 10 feet away. But I'll tell you, I'll admit, I got surprised here a month or two ago. it was after dinner, well after dinner. It was dark because it's winter. And I look up and there's somebody at our front door. And I'm like, what in the heck? And he kind of was messing around. Then he took off. So, of course, I immediately go to the door and I realized I don't have my gun on me. And what it was a package delivery that we weren't expecting. But had that guy had nefarious intent, that could have been a bad deal. So that I put a big red X mentally next to myself that I was not prepared for that. So, that's one of those situations. And I'll tell you a story I'd completely forgotten until you were talking, Roy. I had a friend on the police department, and I've always remembered this. This has been a long time ago. He was sitting after dinner in the recliner watching TV with his wife. All of a sudden, his front door burst in because he never really locked his front door. And in runs this guy with a crazed look, and he realizes he knows the guy. And right behind him is a great big guy, and they're going to go. And he's like, what are you doing? It turns out the first guy was being chased by the other guy because of some peccadillo they had. And he knew my friend was a cop and lived there. So he just burst right in the door. And I said to my buddy, did you have a gun? Well, I was in the bedroom. And I'm like, you're lucky because, if one of those people, one or both of them had nefarious intent, you were had. That was it. And as it was, he was one of these guys, he great fighter, but he's not really so much the shooter guy. And if he hadn't been able to whip both guys, who I think were both bigger than him, he would have just been in trouble. So, and if they'd been armed with anything, he'd have been in trouble. So I always remember that. First of all, what's your first line of defense? Locks. If people want to get through them, they can get through them, but at least they're not going to sneak through them. The instances of people using lock picking and, being very surreptitious, that almost only happens in the movies. What happens if somebody wants on the other side of your locked door, they kick it or they bust a window and reach in. Both of those things are going to at least let you know. And if I see my front window on my door bust and a hand come through, I guarantee I'm going for my gun right then and there. And if it kicks open, well, at least I know that this guy is just not soliciting for the Boy Scouts and that we have a serious problem. So that was kind of where I was going to go with all this, Roy, is a gun. If you want to carry it home, I encourage it. Great for you. I don't do it 100% of the time, probably 90 plus. But I think the bigger picture here is the fact that we have to have layers of security. And you and I have talked about this at length, but I think this is a perfect example. Yeah, she had a camera, but did she have an alarm? Did she have a plan? Did she have escape routes and all this kind of stuff that we've talked about? It sounds like she had one piece of the puzzle. And the end takeaway on this little diatribe I'm having is we're going to violate the gun rider rule, which is a gun is not a magic wand. If somebody's coming in to get you and you get your Master Blaster 5000, that solves the problem. Well, it may. It probably will. But there's a good chance it won't either. So, when we're talking about this, I don't want folks to get too wrapped around the axle about, like you said, which caliber, which grain weight, which load. If you want to carry a gun, great. But a gun is going to be useless if you leave your doors unlocked and your shrubs are overgrown and there's no lights and you don't have a dog and all these factors. So I kind of covered about 52 different points there, Roy. So which one would you like to take going forward?
Well, we both arrested burglars. I know I have. And I would always engage them. There they are sitting in the back seat of your car with handcuffs on, looking forlorn,
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, man, what brought you into this line of work? And just talk about things like that. And the overwhelming majority of them, I mean, I can never think of a single one I ever arrested who said, well, I always try to go to houses where I think there's somebody home. I mean, because that's all. It's like they do not want to be interrupted. They don't want to come inside while you're there. And the other thing, though, is that most of them are lazy and they're not professionals. and they really do hit targets of opportunity. And I've had many of them tell me, I just kind of go door to door. I knock on the door. If somebody answers it, I give them some bullshit answer about something. I go on to the next house. If I knock on the door and nobody answers, I reach down and try the doorknob. And, and it's like, and it's amazing the number of times the door opens, or the window right next to the door is open. And so, we call those volunteer victims,
Exactly.
That's what you are. So you got to not be a volunteer victim. But the only thing I can stress though, is that people would say, they say, oh, well, you're just paranoid. It's like, well, no, I'm not actually. I'm just cautious and prepared. I mean,
exactly.
Are you paranoid if you have a first aid trauma kit? I don't know if these people would say that same thing then. Are you paranoid if you have one of those, what are they called? AID heart, starter machines like you see? Are you paranoid? What, are you afraid you're going to have a heart attack? Yeah. I mean, what, are you afraid someone's going to break in your house? Absolutely. And I'll be the first to admit the classic, he's kicking in my front door right now. You hear these 911 calls, right? He's kicking in my front door. He's reaching inside, help, please help. And then you hear him come in and then the phone goes dead, right? Yeah. I always like to hear the ones where you go, he's coming in the front door right now. He's inside. Stop. Go away. Bang, 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 bang. And then there's a pause.
You may want to have the coroner en route.
Yeah. And then they say, I just had to shoot him. Is that okay? And it's like, of course, we're all applauding and laughing and saying, yay, that was a good ending. But I think on a practical side of this too is that classic, like if the guy comes to your front door with a burglar mask on, right? and a black bag and black gloves, and he's dressed in a black, well, okay, that's, hello, could this be a burglar? Right? But the one that's going to get you is the one that pulls up in front of your house in a car, and he's got a sticker sign on the side that says delivery driver, right? Yeah. Which I could get made at, the local store in 5 minutes. Hey, can you print out a sticker that says delivery driver, right? And he walks up to your door wearing, one of those lime green, vests like workers wear, right? Yeah. And a baseball hat that says UPS, right? It could say anything. And you see him on your camera and he knocks on the door holding a box. What are 99% of us going to do?
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to open the door.
Exactly.
And so you just opened your door to a stranger, to come into your house. Now, if things go to hell right then, and you have a 38 in your pocket, you have a much better chance than if you don't have a 38 in your pocket.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
It is. And I want to talk about this specific incident that we're talking about, the Nancy Guthrie situation. That guy was there to apparently kidnap her. So that is a teeny tiny minuscule fraction of home invasions, kidnapping for ransom. There are home invasions that, especially in more urban areas where they know, you've got valuables. But what the media doesn't tell you, the majority of the time in those cases, they involve drugs. They know you've got drugs, you got drug money and some guns. So that's what those home invasions generally happen. Now, they do sometimes just hit John Q. Citizen, who seems to have a nice house and wears a lot of, fancy jewelry. But again, those instances are a lot less than what you would think. The other thing I was going to talk about was sometimes you don't even get the door open. We had an incident here in Indiana that you may have seen in the news about a month ago. A judge who was presiding over a trial of some motorcycle guys, somebody knocked on his door. He said, "Who is it?" And they shot him and his wife right through the door. So, that whole scenario of, well, I opened the door and there he was in his burglar outfit, which I wanted to sidebar there, Roy. I've never caught anybody in a burglar uniform. I mean, they've always got a mask and a crowbar in the bag, and I've never caught anybody like that.
No,
But
usually
anyway,
they have like a broken screwdriver,
exactly.
and a beanie, and they smell like transients. So
well, because they are, or they're meth addicts, and that's just how they do their business. But anyway, the point I was trying to get was, and we talk about this a lot. People that the general public has this idea, and it's generally from television, how things go down. And that's not how it goes down. You gotta understand that, like any dangerous situation, it happens fast, it happens unexpected, and it may not be exactly as you expect. So when you're planning your layers of security, your protective, and your response to dangerous things, including using a gun, you need to be thinking about, what if it's 3 people? What if it's a young teenager who looks to be about 8? Those people have, I mean, not an 8-year-old, but younger looking teenager, they might mean you deadly harm too. So these are all these situations you need to be thinking outside of what television and the movies portray these incidents are like.
It's really interesting. You're exactly right too. It's layers. I've talked to burglars who say, I look out front. If I see lights that come on, I go to the next house.
Exactly.
If I see bars on the window, I go to the next house because they're lazy, right?
Uh-huh.
If I go to the door, a dog barks, I'm out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that. And so, as you said, keep your hedges trimmed, put automatic lights out front, have a Ring camera, and for God's sake, pay the $10 a month and have them so they save the recordings. Evidently with this Guthrie thing, she didn't have that program, so it took a while for the cops to be able to recover the videos. And but yeah, I'd have that multiple level. Do you have a dog? Great, best burglar alarm in the world, and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, you have the final say. And so you can rely on these things, but it's the old trust but verify. I mean, if I hear I have several cameras, Ring cameras on my driveway and around the property. And so if one of them goes ding, now, okay, I know someone just entered the gate, right? And if another one goes ding, now I know he's coming down my driveway, right? And then if it goes ding as he's walking up my front door, I know there's somebody at the door. And so that gives you a chance to be prepared, check the camera. Who is this? Is it a delivery driver? Do I know him? I mean, if it's Keith, your favorite UPS driver, well, great. Let the dog out. He'll come up, feed him a biscuit. It's a happy hug-a-thon, right? But if it's a car, especially with this rise of Amazon's I think they're like freelance delivery drivers.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had them here. Now, remember, we're a third of a mile off the road. It's very dark on my property. You've been here, right? And 9:30 at night, I'll hear ding, camera. Then I'll hear ding, another camera. And I'll look outside. We have live video surveillance around the property. And I'll look up at the monitor, and there'll be some decrepit-looking, beat-up piece of crap SUV, with a taped-on bumper, pulling up in front of my house. And then some 300-pound cigarette-smoking, shuffling step guy will get out, open up the back, fumble around for a minute, come out, kind of look around. If I'm lucky, they'll just put it down there,
Yeah.
But, or else they'll shuffle up to the front door, and then the lights come on, of course, right? And then they take a picture of it, and then they shuffle back and they leave. Well, it's like, well, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. I've actually gone out and greeted them a few times because they pull up like that at night. Well, I'd walk out the front door and I'd go around the corner and they won't expect me, and I've many times, they kind of go, whoa, and I smile and I have my hand in my pocket and I say, who are you? And they say, I'm a delivery. Here's Amazon. Here you go, sir. Sorry, sir. So. I mean, that's the reality. You can't assume anything. You can never assume anything. That's all there is to it. So you have to have, what is it? You have the color codes. You have to always be in yellow and be prepared to go to orange really fast.
That's the way I operate. Around my house, I'm in yellow, and something we haven't talked about. Both of us, when we're out in the yard, generally are 100% armed. I figured that's when the problem's going to start, because I'm behind locked doors, windows. I've got cameras, surveillance, dog, the whole shooting match. But when I'm out mowing and I've got my little headphones on and, I'm just trying to get those nice straight lines, I'm only a few feet from the street. If somebody wanted to do something ugly to me, I would have about that much notification. You're in a different situation. They really got to work hard, and you got a lot of clear fields of fire. I don't have that. I may literally be standing next to the street. So again, that's my choice. I live in a nice suburban neighborhood that's pretty safe, but still it's that idea of it may not be in the middle of the night with the guy with the mask and the crowbar. In this case, Nancy Guthrie, it looked like a vest on. He was wearing, if you go to your door and you see a guy wearing black nitrile gloves and a face mask, a thinking person would say, why, this is unusual. I've never seen Amazon doing that. So
I don't know. Did he break in? Do we know? Or how did he get in? Do we know?
I think he did. I think the door was locked and he forced his way in. So, if we go on that assumption, again, what was she doing? Was she standing on the other side and, oh my goodness, here you are in my home? Or was she asleep? And there's another thing I want to talk about, the nightstand gun. And I have one, but I think that's another one of those things that people just assume because there's a gun there. You'll wake up in time, and you and I have talked about this a lot. And he will be perfectly silhouetted like a B-27, and I will say, "Stop! I'm an armed citizen, and you need to." It doesn't work that way. And I'm sure you work cases like this where people have literally woken up in the middle of the night with somebody on top of them.
Absolutely.
And, It even with all of your preparation, think that through too, that, if they're coming in to steal, to rob, to abduct you, just because you've got that 38 in the nightstand, you may not even have a chance to get to it, or you may have to fight for your life to get to it. So I'm just trying to run these scenarios that we've actually seen actually in the field and what crime really looks like. Because frankly, most people think they know, and they just don't.
No, it rarely looks like it looks on TV. And you're right. The sexual attackers, they are stealthy. They do want to enter when someone's there. They will come in and do just what you're saying. I remember there was a case one time, and I didn't work it, but I was a uniform officer. I responded to one of the initial calls, and it was like an 80-year-old lady, and she was on her bed and woke up like that. And there was actually this, dirtbag who was raping her, and she had a 32 H&R top break Magnum that her husband had bought when they got married, like 67 years before. He had died, and I swear to you, she picked it up and held it up to his head, and she clicked it 4 times before one of the rounds went off.
Wow.
Well,
but one did go off.
The ammo in it was 65 years old or something. So, but she was lucky she had the gun there. She had the presence of mind to do it and all that kind of stuff. But I think, let's talk about some mechanics too here, because one of the comments in the video, the guy said, after listening to you guys about carrying guns and hearing about this case of this recent kidnapping, he said, I've decided that I am going to carry a gun when I'm at home. But his palette of firearms is limited. He's got like a sporting shotgun and a bolt-action hunting rifle, but evidently one of his kids gave him a SIG 226 one time, a million years ago. So that's a full-size holster pistol, like a cop would carry it. He said, well, I'm going to start carrying that. What do you think? And I told him, I said, you can do whatever you want to do, but that's going to get old in about a half an hour. Especially if you're in your home in your jammies or something, what are you going to do? And so as far as the mechanics of it, I think a small gun, a small auto, if you're willing to practice a little bit, otherwise a small frame revolver, it doesn't matter, Rossi, Taurus, Smith & Wesson, Ruger, I don't care. but get one. If it's 22, that's fine. None of that matters to me. But if you get a gun, get familiar with it, practice a little bit, and then be dedicated to having it either near you or in your pocket. And I don't mean in the other room. And I know people say, oh, well, I'm reading in the bedroom and I'm going to go out to the kitchen and get some water and then I'm going to come back. And you know what? I promise you, that's when it's going to happen, and so you can't predict that. You can play the odds. Chances are good that you probably can go and get a drink of water and come back, but there's that one time, and I have certainly been surprised. I know you have been surprised. And the fact that I was prepared to fight if I had to, that meant a lot. I have to say one more thing too about that whole bedside gun thing. I mean, you and I are both lucky. We don't have any little kids. They don't,
Right.
When they visit, we lock anything up. I have a bedside gun, among other guns, but my bedside gun is actually in the drawer. And I do that because, especially as I get a little bit older, when I wake up at night, I really want that 5 seconds or 10 seconds to clear my brain a little bit, get your eyes working, get your hearing going, make sure you're not making a bad idea. And some people may argue, well, if you need that gun, you might need it right now. Yes, that's true. But the other side is the next time you get up at nighttime and it's 2:30 in the morning and you've been sleeping for 4 hours, and you have to go to the bathroom or something, honestly, stop. When you first wake up, really think about, can you see? Can you hear? Are you thinking real clearly? Like, could you really pick up a gun and manipulate it and engage somebody right then? I mean, maybe if you're 30 years old, but so that's just something to think about, so, and I don't think people do, because they go back, they default to that thing you and I always laugh about, oh, it's a perfect burglar and he's standing in the hallway and he's backlit and he's, and you're dressed up and you have your body armor on,
Yeah.
And,
that's how I sleep, Roy, because I'm tactical.
I know. Well, and actually, this is something else we should talk about, because I wrote this up years and years and years ago. We were talking about home carry and stuff like that. And I advocate, and I still do, and I have one, is that you just get a little pouch with a neck strap, and just keep that next to your bed. And in that, I have a bottle of water and I have a tourniquet and I have a big wad of bandage, and I have a pocket knife and I have a backup flashlight clipped to it. And because when you get up at nighttime, unless you're somebody that I don't know anybody of, you're going to be in your all-togethers, or you're going to be in your jammies, or you're going to be in your underwear. And guess what? There's no pockets.
Exactly.
And so when you wake up, you just do this and you just throw this thing over your shoulder. And because now you have water, light, a knife, water because you get thirsty, really, especially if something happens, and a bandage, a spare magazine. And if you're somebody who sleeps with your phone next to you, then you can also toss your phone in there if you want to at nighttime. But think about that. I also keep electronic earmuffs next to the bed. Now, the electronic earmuffs are on top of my nightstand. And so if I ever have to go to guns at nighttime, and I've done that a couple times, where it's like, what the heck is going on there, right? You wake up. Well, the first thing I do is put on my electronic earmuffs. I turn them up, because that gives you Superman hearing, and that if you do have to shoot a gun or something, you can still hear, right? And plus, it gives you that little 5 count to get your body going, It's like, if you have the wherewithal to reach it, think about what's going on, reach over, pick up, put on your hearing aid or your protection, turn it up. Well, now your head's starting to clear,
Yeah.
But also, I wear hearing aids, and at nighttime I don't wear them. And so if I get up at nighttime and try to respond to something like that, what is like, oh, excuse me, wait just a minute here while I put my hearing aids in, no, I just grab this, throw them on, turn it up. Ta-da.
I'm laughing because afterwards the police are going to, so Mr. Huntington, what did you hear? Well, I got up and I heard, because that's all we hear after years of gunfire.
It is kind of true. Yeah. Although,
Well,
it's interesting. Wait, Cal, one more quick thing.
Sure,
Is that
sure.
gauge your reaction if you're a man, a husband, or something listening to this. If at nighttime when your wife reaches over and pokes you, when you wake up, look at how you wake up. In other words, are you one of those ones that when your wife touches your shoulder, you go, bing, you're awake, right? Or are you like a lot of people that your wife has to basically beat you with her fist, to get you to come back alive from being dead asleep, and based on that, you should sort of make some decisions about how you're going to be carrying your gun at nighttime. So, okay, sorry, I was on a rant.
No, that's good. I was going to say people really do like it when we talk about how we do it, just as kind of a baseline and some suggestions that they can apply to their own situation. Let me go back to my bedside gun is actually, and I should have looked this up. It's a case made by Streamlight, and it's manual. It's not electronic. It's got several buttons, and it's flat. It fits right in my drawer. And the reason I do that is twofold. Like you said, Roy, number one, I want to at least have enough, to be awake enough to know, I know instinctively what the combination is. So at least I have to get up and get functional enough to think, oh, 3 fingers here, and now I can get my gun. The other thing is grandkids. We are very careful, and I've talked about my procedure for making sure, that there aren't any guns lying around, but that's another help there too. And I had to laugh. I just took stock of my dresser, or not, it's not, what do you call it? A little table next to my side of the bed.
Yeah.
I don't know how many flashlights I've got there, but it's too many, but that's pretty funny. But that's another thing to talk to if you have a bedmate, say, if something happens that I wake up and I'm suddenly being pummeled in the face, or somebody's trying to stab me or whatever, I'm going to try to go for that gun, but it may not happen. I've got more immediate concerns, but honey, you know where the other guns are. Find them and put it in his ear hole and pull the trigger until you can't pull it anymore. So
I agree.
Again, that's something, another multi-layer type thing of, I've got a plan, for virtually every realistic eventuality. Plus I'm also flexible, and, because you never can war game every scenario. And my final bit, I will tell you, Roy, and you're always suggesting stuff to buy that is great finds. I think I found one that you probably already know about, but have you looked up these inexpensive motion activated night lights? We got some recently because my wife likes night lights because she gets up more than I do in the night to go potty. And I finally realized our bedroom, to me, I need to have total darkness to sleep. And with night lights, even out in the hall and in the bathroom, it's like, this is way too light. So I found these motion sensitive lights, and the ones we got even have an adjustment. So you can have them barely on, or you can have them look like it's daylight. And what it does is you get by them and it'll kick the light on. So we've got one in the bathroom. We've got one on her side of the bed. So if she moves, steps out of bed or whatever, it comes on, and since it's low on the floor, it doesn't really wake me up at all, but it illuminates that area where she doesn't kick the bed with her foot, which we've all done. And I got to thinking that, if I have one of those in the hallway, because our dog sleeps in our bedroom, if it's in the hallway, if I turn it on bright, if I'm a light enough sleeper, if it came on, I'd probably wake up. So there's just one more layer. If they get past my alarm system, my cameras, my locked doors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's just one more layer of protection. So that's my home security tip, security / convenience tip, those inexpensive motion sensor nightlights. So
nothing wrong with that. And if you don't have lights outside around your house, you should put lights outside around your house, because just like cockroaches, these guys don't like to be lit. right?
Yeah.
So if you have lights leading up to your front door and stuff, they'll go next door where the house is completely dark. But the solar powered motion sensor lights that you can put outside are $5, $10, right?
Yep.
So put 2 or 3 of those out there, because then when they walk in and the lights come on, people they automatically assume it's like, do they have a ding dong inside? Do they, what's going on here? So,
Yeah.
and, plus real men buy those little furry slippers that have the LED lights in the toe. And then when you put them on at night, they come on automatically. Huh? I'm just saying. So,
Wow.
All right. I think we beat it to death. What do you say?
We have. Let me add one more tip I just thought of. I was out recently at a friend's house ice fishing, and he's got a very nice place down a driveway. You know what he's got in addition to cameras like you've got? He's got a camera facing outbound to get the license plate, because our state does not require front license plates, and I think about half the states don't. So he's got one facing outbound so that he'll get a picture of, if it's a burglary or whatever it is, if somebody's coming in, he'll also get a picture of them going out, and pretty easy to get license plate numbers. So, or at least really good descriptions. So something to think about.
That's actually smart thinking. I know my camera systems, they get you coming and going, right?
Yeah.
And I also have the fixed surveillance cameras that are 360 degrees around the house. And so, and people don't think, like, I'm in a rural area here. Well, in my Walnut Grove down by the fence line, I have some no trespassing signs facing out. Yeah. So you smile, you're on camera, so that way people look and they go, well, maybe I don't want to do this,
Yeah.
So,
yep.
All right. Well, that was actually interesting. And we're ready if we do. And remember, if you have questions, please ask a question in the comments. So.
Exactly. You can also drop me a line. That's editor at Guns Podcast U.S. And Roy, a real quick announcement. I'm pretty tech savvy and I can build websites and all that stuff, but I hate doing it. And I know we've had a lot of problems with the Guns Podcast U.S. website since it's been up. It's just been a real pain in my you-know-what. I also had a personal site, brentwheat.com, and I never really kept that up. So I finally tackled all that. If you go to gunspodcast.us, you will find all of my writing. You will find anything that we tell you link-wise. You'll be able to see all the podcast episodes. I will say it really helps us if you go to gunsmagazine.com and watch the podcast or listen to it there. That's the big A answer. But if I say check out Guns Podcast U.S. for something, a special bit of information, or if you want to buy our merch, finally got the store working. I've had several people say, I tried to buy something and it didn't work. And you're right, because I tried to and it just didn't work. So anyway, if you go to gunspodcast.us, it looks different. It's a little bit different, but all the great Guns Podcast goodness that you know and love is all there. But again, let's say, first and foremost, make sure you go to gunsmagazine.com when you listen or watch the podcast. That really helps us out, and it helps the team over at FMG to keep us coming back week after week. So anything I missed there, Roy?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Excellent. Well, before we go, here's a quick word from our great sponsor, Tango Down.
Visit tangodown.com to explore the full lineup and sign up for email updates so you don't miss what's next. Tango Down, combat gear without peer.
Well, I hope you found this interesting and you've got actionable intelligence to keep yourself and your home safer. So on behalf of Roy Huntington, of course, I am Brent Wheat, the host of the Guns Podcast U.S. I thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next week with more great stuff. And as we always say at the end, now get out there and get shooting.